Did you know that people who depend on social media for validation, who live for those likes and clicks and responses to their social media posts, are more likely to be subject to abusive behavior? Welcome to Are You Brave Enough? This week's episode is Are You Brave Enough to Claim Your Self Worth? In honor of October being Domestic Violence Awareness Month. I want to dive into a little bit more about domestic violence and abusive behavior and what that looks like, because it's surprising the number of people, women in particular, who experience abusive behavior from someone close to them. So stay tuned for Are You Brave Enough to Claim Your Self Worth? I'm Karen Ann Bulluck, and this week's episode of Are You Brave Enough to Claim Your Self Worth focuses on the value of claiming our self worth versus being subject to abusive behavior. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and this is a cause that is near and dear to my heart. I participate in a networking group called BW Nice here in New Jersey that supports our local domestic violence agencies. And I listened to a talk this morning from the executive director of our local agency, and she told us some really surprising things that I really wanted to share with you. The one being what I mentioned in the intro, that people that really look for validation from social media, that crave those likes and responses to their social media posts, are people that are more likely to experience abusive behavior from others. So, what is abusive behavior? A lot of people think that domestic violence is restricted to women that are battered, that are physically beaten or intimidated physically by their significant other. But really, domestic violence is so much more than that, that we're not even aware of sometimes. Domestic violence can be emotional abuse, verbal abuse, putting someone down, calling someone names, making them crazy by telling them that what they're feeling isn't real. Those are real emotional abuse behaviors. It can be what we call cyber or technical abuse in this day and age. And this is a new form of abuse. It can be stalking people on social media. It can be stealing passwords and breaking into accounts. It can be threatening or actually sharing private information about someone else on social media, or sending pictures taken of someone to a loved one or a family member or to an employer. Those are all forms of technical or cyber abuse. There can be financial abuse, controlling assets, not allowing people to spend money on what they want to spend money on, tracking every credit card transaction so that you have to justify what you're spending money on. Those are forms of financial abuse. So it's not just physically getting beaten that is what is constitutes domestic violence. Now, the next question is, what do you do about it if you or someone else that you know is experiencing these kinds of abusive behaviors from someone, whether it's a loved one or a family member or even an employer? Because these things can happen in a lot of different situations. The first thing is not to tell people that they're victims, because we're not victims. We sometimes experience behaviors from other people that aren't acceptable, but that's different than labeling yourself a victim. So you never want to call yourself or someone else a victim, because you're not. You have agency, you have power. And that's part of claiming your self worth. You are worth more than allowing yourself to be subjected to abusive behavior. But what do you do? Well, the good news is that there are resources. Almost every county, every state in this country, and in other countries, there are domestic violence agencies that are available to offer you all different kinds of help, from counseling to legal advice to actual safe houses if you really need to get away from a really threatening situation. So if you are not sure even whether the behavior that you're experiencing is abusive behavior, find the hotline number in your area and call them. Ask questions. It's free, it's confidential, and you can get a lot of information about whether what you experience is abusive behavior or not. If you're not sure, ask. If you're not feeling comfortable or safe in a situation, ask. Find help. And the first place to start is that domestic violence helpline in your area. It's usually a toll free number. Your information is kept confidential. You don't even have to give them your name. But you're worth more than being subjected to physical, verbal, emotional, financial, or cyber abuse. When you really believe in your self worth, when you really claim your value as a human being, you're going to be less likely to be exposed to this kind of behavior or tolerate it. You're going to be able to see it more clearly and more quickly. Now, I know you believe in yourself. We all do. But how much? A lot of us are taught, especially as women, that if we really claim our self worth, that we're being arrogant or we're being boastful or we're being too full of ourselves. But claiming your true self worth isn't any of that. Claiming your true self worth is knowing your value and knowing how you deserve to be treated. So, for this October, for Domestic Violence Awareness Month, I want you to really look around and see how the people in your life are treating you. I'm not saying that everybody's abusing you, they're not. And sometimes people make mistakes, and it's not abuse, it's just somebody having a bad day and taking it out on you. But if you see repetitive patterns of people not treating you well, of people putting you down, shaming you, people treating you with disrespect, pay attention to that because it might be a sign of abusive behavior in someone else. Or if you see friends or loved ones that are experiencing this, encourage them to talk, encourage them to ask questions, encourage them to call that domestic violence helpline because we all need support sometimes and we all get ourselves in difficult situations sometimes. And it's easy to say, well, it's not that big a deal. But sometimes it becomes a big deal. Sometimes that domestic violence escalates into situations where we can't handle them anymore. Do you know that statistics show that 1 in 4, or sometimes some statistics even show that 1 in 3 women experience domestic violence of some form in their lifetime? That's a lot of women. And women aren't the only ones that experience it. Men do too. Domestic violence is much more prevalent than we really like to talk about. And that's why October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And that's why I'm encouraging you to really claim your self worth and to really stand up for yourself in situations where you might be subject to some form of abusive behavior, whether it's at home, at work, or someplace else. No one deserves to be subjected to abusive behavior by anyone. And if you claim your self worth, you will be less likely to be subjected to that behavior. So claim your self worth today and help someone else claim theirs. Thank you for listening to this episode of Are You Brave Enough? Stay tuned next week for another episode, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss a single episode of Are You Brave Enough? Loving this content? Are you brave enough to hit subscribe? I dare you to hit subscribe. Don't miss a single episode of Are You Brave Enough?